So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending where you're based. I'm guessing there's many people here across the globe. Thank you for coming in to our workshop. This is a series of workshops that we're doing for the post-COVID Hack 2020 Hackathon. Today, we welcome Tomasz, the CTO and founder of Nethermind. For those of you who don't know, it's the fastest Ethereum client in the market. So I thought I'd mention that. Feel free to kind of interject with any questions along the way. Just please do remain muted during the presentation unless you have a question. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So don't be shy if you have any questions. I think Tomasz will probably do a quick intro on his background, his company, and then a little bit more about some of the key points that we're going to be discussing in this workshop. So I'll hand it over to you, Tomasz.
Okay, thank you. Just to confirm, because I think you wanted to record a video of mine as well, so people feel like it's a bit more personal. Can you see my video or not?
We can, yes.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay. So yeah, hello, great. Welcome, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and happy to have such a great audience. And today we talk about what to avoid when building your first blockchain app. So it means that we'll go to the basics, assuming that people who come to hackathons and want to actually maybe look at what most basic mistakes they would make if just trying to imagine where to go from zero, where to go, where to start, what products would be useful, what mistakes to avoid. And this is because switching to blockchain is like a big paradigm change. It's all based on a few years of questions that were coming to me from various workshops, people who were meeting me at conferences, meetups, and so on. And they were asking all these basic questions, and I think they all had the same questions that I had in the past when I was starting. It's just very natural to make some mistakes and make some assumptions about blockchain, and we'll talk about all of this today. So once again, I'm Tomasz Stańczak. I'm a founder at Nethermind. Nethermind is an Ethereum client, allowing you to synchronize and use Ethereum network or build Ethereum private networks if you want entirely. Yeah, let me start. So we'll start a bit with a small fantasy adventure. So I'll walk a bit further from reality for a moment. So the first misconception that I like to talk about is you join blockchain space, blockchain industry, and everyone says the blockchain is just amazing, solving the world problems, and it's inherently good. And it's a bit like this ring power. So blockchain is not good by itself. It's powerful. It will be very powerful, and it's up to you to make it good. Actually, you don't want to assume that whatever you'll do on blockchain it's better because it's against the governments, it's against, I don't know, some kind of privacy infringements or whatever you can imagine. No, blockchain is not good. There's lots of bad things that you can do with blockchain. And there is amazing lots of good things that you can do with blockchain. So just keep in mind, whatever you build, you'll have to remember that it's just not automatically improving the world. It's up to you to make it happen. And because blockchain is very often nowadays, if you start anything on blockchain, you have to immediately start thinking of how to build a startup, how to create something new, experimental, pioneering, and so on. Because if you try some more traditional technologies, software technologies, then obviously you can go some other route. Like you're not immediately like the pioneer doing something totally new. With blockchain, you generally think that you want to go almost like this startup experimental way. And it means that you have to think of this typical journey that you'll make. So you have an idea, and at the beginning, many people like just look at blockchain and think, oh, something hasn't been solved yet. Like this, some amazing idea for blockchain. I'll do this on blockchain. And this is a typical thing, like, I don't know, social media on blockchain, or I don't know, libraries on blockchain, or Uber on blockchain, and so on and so on and so on. You have these ideas, but you don't keep it to yourself what you want to do. is to go to community, go to smart people, and keep sharing it and keep asking them about what they think about it, because this is how you will learn at the beginning. This is how you will ensure that you can grasp the paradigm quickly remove the bad ideas that a lot of people lose like a month or two at the beginning just on something that's entirely not relevant for blockchain. And because they think about it, they just like learn the bad habits of thinking about blockchain. And the sooner you remove it, the better. Now, what happens next? If you actually go to the right people, they will introduce you to other people who can help you. They'll help you to clarify ideas, tell you what to go with based on your skills, what to build, suggest you some ideas, help you build teams, get funding, and so on and so on. This is the startup way. It doesn't have to be like exactly this kind of funding and team building as we're thinking of when we're creating startup. It can be just kind of build a team of people that with you will be triaging different ideas, building things, experimenting, playing with, and this funding of more like the knowledge that you need to go further. And if the idea was really good and you're afraid that you'll share it and people will take it away, don't worry. They'll definitely prefer you to deliver. They'll have lots of other ideas that they work on. They're busy. And it's all about that you build a network of right people around you, like here, right? Like on the post-COVID hackathon, fantastically organized. There's so many people that will go on that journey with you, right? So you have the fellowship, you have the knowledge, right people around you, you deliver, and it'll be tough. It will be tough, right? And what happens if you don't share your idea? It stays with you. It stays with you forever, and someone else will take the journey instead of you. Okay, so I just come back to reality, to this more like businessy or decentralized finance or decentralized things around blockchain. The very first thing that usually people make mistakes about or just bad assumptions about is about data on blockchain. So what you do with data on blockchain, you store it on blockchain, because everyone says, as a kind of like simplification, they'll tell you blockchain is like distributed database, so it's a storage, it's ledger, and so on. Whenever you hear these words, you think, oh yeah, great, so it's a database. And what do you do with databases? You store data there. So that's what people think. And they hear it and they think the business they will build will just give everyone access, transparent access or private access to something very important for everyone. And they'll think, I don't know, health data or the news or tweets or media or whatever. And we just push it to blockchain, it'll simplify the access, it'll democratize access and so on. It's not entirely like this. It's totally opposite. So before I talk more about data, let's look at this table. And it will be important for everything that I'll mention later, because this off-chain, on-chain conversation is super important for blockchain. So what do we say when we mean off-chain? And we say about processing, we say about data. Off-chain is just not blockchain-based, very cheap, executed on a single machine, trusted. So processing off-chain will be whether it's on your desktop, whether it will be on the cloud, but not on-chain. So it can be still distributed, but mostly will mean that if you're processing off-chain, you're just doing it once, and you trust whoever executed that, you collect the results, and you use them in some way. With the data, it's similar. Maybe you store it once, maybe with a backup, maybe a few times. Maybe you distribute the data, but you generally assume that more or less you have a few copies at most of the data. And again, it's relatively cheap nowadays, right? So we have tons of data stored on the clouds everywhere in the world, right? Like flying around us on Wi-Fi. So. And again, it requires trust. So you store the data somewhere and you assume that people don't change it, and you don't verify if they change it or not. So you don't make checks on checksums of every single file, every single movie that you download. You don't expect that you'll be verifying if the video that YouTube delivers to you is exactly the same as the person who uploaded the video to YouTube. You don't check the checksums and so on and so on. Now, when you move on chain, it means that generally it's like verified thing, verified by every single person who is looking at it. And when you talk about processing, it means that every single person, every single node on the network will just reprocess the same thing. If you talk about data, you will say that every single node will store the data and verify if it was created the way it should be created, if it was not modified, and so on. So when we say off-chain, it's once, it's cheap, it requires trust. It's very efficient. When we say on-chain, it's super expensive, extremely expensive, but it's trustless. Which immediately means that whenever you will think about making something on-chain, you have to extract only the most important things for the core of the blockchain-based solution and put them on-chain. And everything else you keep off-chain. Whether it's computation, whether it's data, doesn't matter. If it doesn't require the characteristics of this very heavy trust and verification, you can put it there. And it's up to you to actually be able to split your application. It's not like everything is on-chain or off-chain, based application by application, no. Within your application, you have to be able to decide which parts of it have to land on-chain and which parts can be off. And now think about
I have a question.
Yeah?
You're saying that it is very expensive, right? Overall, you mean, I think, because for the individual, it's not that expensive.
So actually it is.
Okay.
So on-chain, both computation and storing data on-chain is expensive for the individual that is storing or computing on-chain. So when we here is example of storage. So if you want to store data on-chain, you'll have to cover the cost. I'm taking example of the Ethereum blockchain, right? And easily you can just think that any blockchain, more or less, will have the similar properties because you expect that the storage will be multiplicated. So if you store 32 bytes of data on Ethereum, it costs 20,000 gas. That's the property of the virtual machine. And at the recent 100 grade prices, gas prices, it means that you're paying 80 cents for storing 32 bytes of data. Because you pay the gas cost. It's nobody else who will pay the gas cost. So yes, there will be even more of a cost that everyone else will be maintaining that data forever. But at the time when you push that data to the chain, you actually have to pay for the gas for storing the data. And now simply checking the bigger numbers. So 1 megabyte of data is $25,000. It's extreme cost of storing 1 megabyte of data. 1 gigabyte is $25 million. I mean, the entire Ethereum blockchain state now is 50 gigabytes of data. And it's the last 5 years of the blockchain operations and hundreds of thousands of users. And it's not even millions, it's already billions of transactions that are on chain. And altogether they stored 50 gigabytes. So do not expect that you can push 1 gigabyte more and it's not that expensive. It will be extremely expensive, $25 million now. And now just for fun, think about it this way. Like if you want to store Game of Thrones TV series as a movie on chain, it will be actually cheaper for you to produce the whole TV series. It costs $1 billion to create it. You can just create it once again and you can fix the things that were broken in the 8th season. So it is.
Thank you. Yes, I understand what you're saying. But if you use tricks like Merkle trees or hashing every now and then, you could reduce those costs. Which
yes, so let's talk about this as well. This is exactly what you should be looking for. So hashing, Merkle trees, and so on. So the tricks, let's start with tricks. We're not exactly storing data, we're storing something. And what do we store? So before I explain that, let's talk about undeniability of data. So like very, very often maybe in 2017, but also later, people were, for some reasons, there was this like rhetoric that storing medical data on chain, encrypted, would be a good idea because everyone can access your medical data and so on. And I like to ask question to people. It's like, if you have a data leak of the encryption keys, in the future, like in 20 years, if the encryption keys got leaked, and if all the health records got published from blockchain, would you prefer to be able yourself to tell to other people, oh no, there's someone just faked that data? That's the leak, but someone added the data, it's not really my data. Or you would prefer them to have a proof that this data is for sure true and unaltered. So actually, in some cases, you prefer to be able to deny the data that's there. In some cases, you really want to be able to confirm the data, but for confirming the data, you don't need the data itself. For confirming the data, it's enough for you to share the hash and be able to decide when to provide full data to a person so they can verify the hash. So coming back to mistakes that people often make, is this like not trusting the hash, because this notion of the hash in blockchain, and generally the hash, people say, oh yeah, so there can be a hash collision because it's just 32 bytes. So I'm taking, I don't know, 1 terabyte of data and I'm hashing it. I have 32 bytes. So it's some kind of magic compression or something. So am I storing the data? Can someone decompress it? So understanding of the hash is like probably more critical than understanding the curves, elliptic curves, or the blockchain consensus algorithm and so on. Because understanding the hash tells you exactly how to build applications, and the consensus and elliptic curves do not really tell you most of the time how to build the applications on chain. They just define how the blockchain provides these basic properties of everyone agreeing on the same thing and private public key to work and be operational. But hashing and how to store data, this is really, really important for most of your apps. And it's simply like, there's never any need for you to do some defensive coding for hash collision situations. Because if there is hash collision, then Ethereum, for example, or mostly any other blockchain will be broken by definition internally. It will just not work because this assumption of no hash collision is everywhere inside the client code, inside the node code. So no magic. Trust the hash, and what the hash will do for you will just allow you to do this magic of storing information about the data that allows people to verify the data, whatever it is. So if I have medical records, and in what cases I would like to prove my medical record, you can imagine something like I'm going to the eye doctor and say, I want to have the test for my eyesight because I will need it for driving. I'm a professional driver. And you can think the eye doctor just stores the confirmation of the positive result. They would like to store it somewhere. Now, if they store it on chain, and if it's negative, positive, whatever, it will be always visible for someone. Like even if it's encrypted, if the encryption hash is leaked, that data is there on chain as verifiable. Now, if instead they hash that data and store only hash on blockchain, then first of all, they just store this 32 bytes, which was 80 cents as we've seen before, instead of whether it will be half a kilobyte, for example, 1 kilobyte, whatever, it would be maybe in hundreds of dollars. And then moreover, there is nothing like someone can leak the keys, cryptographical keys of the blockchain being public. Nobody can really access that data from the hash. It's just irreversible operation hashing. So no one can access that data because it's just simply not what hash is for. Hash is just for a person that has the initial data, has the so-called pre-image of hash, to be able to hash it again and verify if the hashes are the same. So with hashes, we have the verification of data that is stored somewhere else, not on blockchain, that's potentially only in the possession of the person for whom it's relevant. So if it's my eyesight test result, then suddenly the eye doctor can store the hash and delete the data from their system. They may just quickly hash it somewhere outside of the connected computer and just store this 32 bytes on blockchain and never really store your data. And you will have ability to come with that data printed somewhere, stored somewhere, to any other doctor and tell them, this is the data that some other doctor produced and signed maybe. And you can verify on blockchain that it's really, that was really done 2 years ago, for example. Maybe it's not that important that I do that with, at another doctor place, but more important, I can go to a company that checks the drivers and checks if they are allowed to drive a car. And I come to them and I can provide to them the result of test. And they can verify it on chain without having to communicate with any organization, with any database, without having to call my doctor. They just see it on blockchain that the hash matches and it works. And this is one of the most important things, if not the most important things about building blockchain apps. You can actually work with a lot of data, but you shouldn't store data on chain. You can store it on some, I don't know, on cloud. Probably you don't even want to. You can store it on IPFS, like this distributed style multiplicated data storage. Or you can just give it to the user and say, user is in full control of their data, really. But the hash of that data is on blockchain, so that allows them additional capabilities like abilities to prove that data, to do something with it, to operate with other applications, solutions, institutions, by providing the proof that everything was there, that it was timestamped, that it was done by someone. And this is what it truly means to be in control of your data. If someone tries to think of encryption of data and storing it on chain, then it doesn't work because you don't have the undeniability. You're not in control of your data. Someone can nick that encryption and prove it even if you don't want it to prove. Or maybe if you lose the encryption key, then all your data will be released. So in our case, with the hash, you're in full control of your data because just actually leaking the true data allows people to verify it, yeah? All right, so that was the part about data, and hashing was super important there. And now I'm thinking about like the big issues of blockchain, because there's lots of misconceptions about how they affect the applications that you build, or what they really are and how difficult they really are. So what the big issues of blockchain are. So first of all, the privacy on blockchain. So that's how it looks. I mean, when people say that you can have privacy of transactions on blockchain to some extent, usually it looks like this for the user that doesn't do everything else that is privacy related. So you enter some strange world that you think that you're safe there, but someone is looking at you and someone will be able to extract your data. Because blockchain is not really designed for privacy. The blockchain itself is designed for transparency. The blockchain is designed for sharing the same things, the same state of data with everyone else. So we do hear a lot about privacy when we talk about blockchain, but not because blockchain has some kind of property of being anonymous or private for you. We only hear about it because blockchain is so transparent that people need to find some solutions to increase their privacy when they're operating with blockchain. Because everything they do is public, so they want to mask it more. They want to anonymize it more. Like when you make a transfer, when you transfer cash to a friend of yours, I mean, like you give cash to a friend of yours, you consider it private. It's not happening public. You're not registering it somewhere. You're not recording it on video, nothing. So you don't really care about encrypting that, I don't know, the records, hiding it. Or it's private by nature. And if you operate on blockchain, if you transfer cryptocurrencies to a friend of yours on blockchain, it's all public. It's all transparent. That's why we talk so much about privacy on blockchain, because people want to fix something that blockchain has as a property. But in these particular cases, when you want to cover the traces of transactions, like make them, it's something that you don't want to share for whatever reasons. you need to do something more. And that's why privacy is such a big topic, because people try to fix something that's like a byproduct of this transparency and shared information and public information on blockchain. Now, the big issues again. So the very common mistake about blockchain is that something that you start with very often. You think, oh, blockchain, great. So I've heard about potential like voting, randomness, identity, and so on. You hear about it, and then you start looking for the solution. They're not convincing, so you think, oh, of course I can do that, because it seems so simple. And this is like this deceptively simple things that are on blockchain that are, again, a common mistake at the beginning, but people try to solve them or try to just assume that if they base the solutions on them, that there is some solution there already existing that solves it because it sounds simple. So you'll see over and over again, people trying to do voting properly or doing the like perfect gambling with perfect randomness, or solutions around identity and so on. So I'm not saying that they do not exist, quite good solutions that improve the things. But again, very often, if we think that, oh, blockchain is good at randomizing stuff because it has all those hashes, encryptions, and strange keys. Again, no, we talk about randomness on blockchain, not because blockchain brings the solutions, but because this is a problem on blockchain. Blockchain is transparent, predictable, extremely predictable. When you have the inputs, you will know exactly what will happen. It's not parallel, it's discretionary, it's consecutive. You can say exactly what will happen having the inputs. There is no randomness on blockchain. That's why people try to solve it. Voting, again, it feels like, yeah, so you have the private keys, you have anonymous voting because you have private keys and not people. So you have some kind of smart contracts that can collect the votes. But again, lots of things that are happening on blockchain, they do not allow you to do the voting right. And voting is just one of the examples, but there will be all those deceptively simple things that you have to look at and think that, all right, so this is a bit harder to solve. There are some really, really strong researchers spending years on those problems. And you should be probably looking much closer to some small problems at the beginning, something that will be cool, something that will be cool for a few people, and we'll talk about it in a moment. Now, there is probably something that's coming from the traditional application building. I mean, whenever we make some mistake or when something is not perfect, we assume that there is some space for fixing it, that not everything will be looked at because the systems are just between you and the other user, between you and some corporation and so on. So on blockchain, first of all, if you deploy something there, it will stay, it will be really hard to be changed. And also everything that you do on blockchain is published first, practically. I mean, there will be some advanced mechanisms of like hiding the data information and protecting it, but somewhere there is always either miner or some validator or someone who is broadcasting your transactions, your actions, and they will see what you're planning to do before you do that. And again, some of the applications will be assuming that a transaction pool and the transactions before they hit the chain are some kind of private, unknown space. So I encourage you to read this amazing two articles from Medium recently, the Ethereum is a dark forest and escaping the dark forest, which talk more about the so-called transaction pool. So that magical forest place of where all the transactions go before they land on blockchain. So all of them will be monitored. You'll be always being front-run if you're trying to trade on blockchain. There is no privacy before it hits the block, the same way as everything is public when it's actually on blockchain. So the moment you publish your transaction, it's there, everyone can see it, and everyone who can actually benefit against you from that transaction that you published, they will do that. And even if still there are some transactions that you can push and they'll sneak through, there's less and less of them. And the second article shows here how difficult it's actually to do it right, because they managed to do that. They managed to escape the dark forest, but it goes all the way to talking directly to miners that are acting as white hats here. So think about it in your applications. Don't assume that your users will have some kind of privacy before the transactions hit the mainnet, the chain. Now again, we were talking about making mistake of thinking that difficult things are simple, and it's similarly there is the funny mistake of thinking that simple things are difficult. And let's talk about it as do not decentralize too much. I mean, do not go too far with this paradigm of decentralizations that everything has to be perfect. So no, you don't have to solve all the problems of decentralization. You don't have to be perfect here in a way that there is no way anyone can like centrally control the smart contract, but not because it's not like the ultimate goal of ours, but because it's more like because it's too early for that in many cases. Before you try to analyze your solutions, your small solutions, simple beginner solutions, or even more advanced solutions of yours, before you try to make them perfect on the decentralization layer, think for now if they are useful, if they are pushing the usability of things and solve the problems, and if they, at least to some extent, use the decentralization features of blockchain. Because this like perfect decentralization, in my opinion, can come only after you battle test the solution. And then you can just remove some more things that make it centralized and make it controllable by a single owner. You can remove them one by one when the things are running very smoothly for a longer term, which means that things should be simpler for you in the beginning. Now, like you shouldn't expect too much from yourself that things will be perfect. And most of the applications that are currently on blockchain, on Ethereum, on other blockchains, are not fully decentralized. At least if we talk about smart contracts, maybe. So there is very often some upgradability or someone is having voting that's not truly decentralized voting, and there is some owner of the contract that can destroy it or move the funds. And many of those solutions are introduced for protecting the users, hopefully, because sometimes obviously they are introduced there with malicious intent. But in most of the cases, the very successful big application for now, they'll have these centralized features, even as the general design is decentralized. So just don't try to make things too perfect. Look at the existing examples, solve some problems, and go forward. And the upgradability that I was talking about. So what does it mean, this upgradability? Again, there is some, like you start learning about the paradigm of blockchain, and it tells you it's an immutable ledger. Like you do something and it stays there forever. And that's the design, and you can do that. And this is this like perfect decentralization, immutability, and so on. And suddenly you go to space of Ethereum or other smart contracts, and you see that people really need to change things, fix things, because blockchain is evolving. It's still not yet set in stone. It's not as we would love it to be because it's still being built. And it doesn't mean the technology itself doesn't have this feature of immutability. No other technology probably has that much of immutability as blockchain. It's not yet there because things just need a few more years, or 20 or 30 more years, because we really can deploy some of those most basic concepts to be forever unchanged. We're still modifying things, we're still learning, we're still upgrading and improving this upgradability. So assume that you can do that. Don't worry that this will be considered bad and centralized. It's the way it is now. And if you achieve something, if you deliver something very useful, then you'll be able to remove more and more features. But then you will understand. I mean, for now, don't worry about that, but then you will understand when it happens that you can remove ownership, you can remove upgradability, that some things are obvious to work right for the many years to come. Okay, another big thing, another thing that some projects will tell you that you can avoid it, that you can fix it. I mean, if you have a VC behind you that gives you billions of dollars because they want to have a market share, you cannot assume that you can pay or ignore transaction fees for your users. And the thing is, it's very simple, actually, how transaction fees work on blockchains. And it's very intuitive. And it seems like you don't have to learn about it specifically for blockchain, because really you can compare it to something as simple as a cost of, I don't know, water being delivered to your home, or electricity, as just simple demand, supply. There's more demand, you pay more. There is less demand, you pay less. A supply is how many transactions per second given blockchain can process, how much state it can use, and how quickly it can grow. The thing is, the transaction fees are such a big problem in general that many projects will try to pretend that they're not a problem, because maybe it's from marketing perspective better, or for now they will try just to pay fees for you, but later, sooner or later, it will just hit them very hard because it's unavoidable. And I would encourage everyone who builds at the beginning blockchain to really understand how transaction fees work, and don't try to pretend that there is some solution to that. It's like you would like to sell any electrical appliance without consideration that it costs to run it, that you have to charge it, like trying to sell mobile phones with assumption that you'll always charge them free. I mean, okay, you can be Tesla and charge the cars for them forever for free, but you have to have that money then behind you, right? So transaction fees will not go anywhere. And even if the supply will grow 10, 100, 10,000 times more, the transaction fees will still be a problem, because it's a simple payment for a service, for capacity. It's like with the internet, right? Like, so 30 years ago, you would complain that the internet is too slow, that it's too expensive. It's not like, okay, to some extent, it's not that big of a problem, but you still have to pay for access to internet in most cases, right? It's not gone anywhere, and it'll still be too slow for some things. Even 30 years later now, you cannot maybe yet publish 4K videos from your mobile. People have the appetite for more and more and more. And that's what we should assume that will be on blockchain. So neither assume that the transactions will go somewhere or can solve this problem, nor try to build the applications that will just ignore this problem. Just build the applications that will be useful enough for your user to pay the amount of gas that they require, and design them so they use as few gas as possible. So think of them as like you're delivering the cars, and you try to make them most economic possible. Unless you deliver some sport car, anything that, okay, people want to pay extra for this particular thing. All right, the next big issue of blockchain. Let me check the time, actually. Where do we have the time? I know I have it on my phone.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, so the question is about the before topic, upgradability. So when you were saying upgradability, did you mean it is about scalability, or both are different in that context?
No,
because,
sorry if I didn't explain properly. Upgradability is when you deploy a smart contract, when you deploy a application on blockchain, okay, and you expect that you will be able to replace either the entire smart contract or some parts of it, replace it with a new version. And you tell your users that they have a front end for your application, but you tell them, in a way, blockchain tells you it's immutable and they can verify your contract and the code is law, but you also tell them that actually it can change. And there is actually some parts that will be upgradable. And over time, you want to make them less and less scary. But generally, you should assume that nowadays, everyone has some kind of upgradability built into their contracts, which means that the blockchain contracts, blockchain applications are not immutable. They are not entirely predictable and secure, as they have this trustlessness. You have to trust the owner of the smart contract that they will not replace it while you're not looking, which is totally against the idea of the smart contract being there. That's why over time you will want to remove more and more of those upgradability features and make sure that some parts of it are indeed immutable. That maybe some parts that are responsible for moving funds of the user are immutable. So, but what I say now, like, let's not have this misconception that you join blockchain just because people tell you that the code is low and it's immutable, that's how it's built now. It's not. And don't try to fight against it at the beginning. Just assume that you can actually upgrade the smart contract code. That's what I mean.
Okay, so I mean, if a project built, I mean, for example, if a smart contract has been deployed, and if I want to, for example, like with the time applications evolve. So, for example, I mean, if that concept is developed for the second phase, if I want to upgrade that smart contract, is it possible?
Yeah, it's possible, and just learn online. There's lots of fantastic presentations about how to deliver upgradability. Check the examples of other big smart contracts, how they upgraded the contracts, how they moved from one version to another. Look at the examples also of the contracts that are claiming that are doing that properly, like the code is low, and when they upgrade, they actually move all the users to another address. And see and choose between that, but just don't have the misconception that there is no upgradability whatsoever of the smart contracts. Usually it's either some kind of pattern where you replace a bit of smart contract by replacing a reference, a pointer to another contract, and so on and so on. It's bigger topic, but just don't think it's immutable. Don't let others explain to you that's immutable, because it's not like the way it's done yet.
Because I mean, it's contradictory to the first line of the definition of blockchain, like it is immutable ledger, distributed
exactly.
ledger.
So that's why I say misconceptions, because people sell one thing and the reality is different. And you might be at the beginning scared that you have to do a full decentralization, full immutability, and so on and so on. And that limits the way of how you think about what you can build. And it will just reject some ideas of yours that are perfectly fine, and try to push some ideas that are not fine because they will be just simply much worse than what's on the market and what people are using. And from here, we actually transition to this idea of people being afraid of scaling problems, because there are some big businesses that want to big projects so huge that they'll be able to value them at billions of dollars. But in fact, blockchain is smaller, and that's why so many new hackers, new people, new small companies can build on blockchain and see that as opportunity, because it doesn't scale yet. It means that nobody who's already a huge corporation making a lot of money is able to have any meaningful return from blockchain in a way. Okay? I mean, sure, there are some exceptions around trading and so on, but because it doesn't scale, it gives us a lot of time to build businesses. It's enough for you to think of an application that will be used by a single enterprise user, single enterprise that will install it on their system as a proof of concept, or maybe two enterprises that will integrate with blockchain. If you deliver that, you already have a reasonable and potentially useful in the future solution. If you deliver decentralized finance or decentralized solution that will be used by 100 users, then you actually achieved the similar success as some of the biggest ICOs and blockchain solutions. I mean, the most successful ones have something like tens of thousands of users per day, but many of them have just hundreds. So, which immediately should make things a bit less scary for you. It's, think of a kind of problem which will give you 100 people that will want to pay for it in the crypto space. And you have a solution and something cool that people will talk about, because there'll be a few hundred, few thousand people on Twitter sharing those ideas. And this is the space of exploration and opportunity for all those hackers, new developers, whoever you call yourself, business developers, people of ideas. If you have it, if you think that you can sell it to a handful of users, you already done something on blockchain, and you push things a notch forward.
Okay, got it.
And now the second problem is we assume that if you're not afraid of scaling problems, if you design the application, it only makes sense if it has 1 million users. And this is the misconception when you learn about blockchain and people say, oh, so I'll build this Twitter on blockchain or Facebook on blockchain or Uber on blockchain. Immediately discard it. There is no possibility for now, and for a long time there will be none, to run a blockchain solution for millions of users. And you don't have to do that to be successful in blockchain with blockchain app. Just have 100 of users and it'll be fine. Better if it works for them and they want to pay for that. That's how you start. And it will actually attract the attention of the people in the space. You can get pretty solid funding if you have a few hundred users, because they'll say, wow, that's useful for, this is actually a big market share. I mean, like on Ethereum, there'll be maybe like 100,000 active users. Okay, there are 1 million users of MetaMask now, but probably 99% of them just trade tokens, speculative way. And 1% of them actually doing something a bit more, and just get some percentage of that market. And then you're actually being perceived as someone who succeeds if the blockchain succeeds. And lots of people believe that blockchain will succeed. It will actually scale over time, will be better and better. And you're already on this market and you have some market share with it. And it's so simple. The next misconception, it's like lots of people think that because blockchain is so small market, such a small market, and it's entirely virtual, so it's like somehow disconnected from the physical world. And so they actually want to connect it with the physical world, because it's only in the physical world where you have the scale, the money, the operation. So like they want to say, oh, let's track things as they're moving in the physical world. Let's try to do the art provenance, the proofs of the things. Let's try to help the fiat to crypto onboarding. And I say the best solutions that you can build on blockchain now that will be useful in the future are the ones that totally disregard the physical world. Just start thinking of the future space as the blockchain will succeed the most when the virtual world will have similar or higher value than the real world. And it seems very futuristic, but it's almost unavoidable. Like the virtual space is almost unlimited. We'll be building more and more there. We'll be moving there bigger and bigger parts of our lives. And just imagine this kind of scenario. So you're starting to meet people online in virtual space more and more. Like it's so easy to imagine that now with the COVID and so on. Like you're slowly meeting people less in real life and more time on the Zoom. Imagine that you want to, like, why people were building palaces in the past. I mean, they wanted to show their power, their strength, the money that they spend, the money that they control, the artists that work for them and only for them. And why people wouldn't like to do that in the virtual world? Why people, like, we already know that we pay a lot for the virtual items, for games, for NFTs, for whatever. Like, people will actually start spending huge money for the art, for the virtual properties, some kind of virtual reality representation of their power and their status. And they will be inviting people for Zoom meetings in their virtual space that will be designed by artists, will be delivered by the finest, whatever, 3D designers, programmers, and so on. And they will want to have uniqueness of that. They want to be able to prove that those artists work only for them. And this is when blockchain actually finds its perfect, perfect use case. So it brings the proofs of uniqueness. It brings the ownership to the virtual space, because everything in the past was just, you could just copy it, digitally copy it, send it around. And with blockchain, you have this, okay, this is fake and this is true. You may have copied that, but I can show everyone that this has been done for me, that I'm the owner of this piece of art that's hanging here, or maybe even connected with some kind of enclave computing, so it can be only rendered if you're invited by me to see it. So it will be only decrypted and processed on some processors if I allow someone to render this piece of art for you in this given moment. So blockchain in the future may operate in the world where we need the digital uniqueness and ownership, and it will be very valuable there. So don't be too worried about the digital space being too small. It will be growing all the time. It will be more and more valuable. And again, like very often we'll be talking about identity, how to bring this real world of identity of ours to the virtual space. Try to think about the future world, which actually develops so much that it changes so much that many of the traditional concepts from the current physical world will start to lose their clear meaning. So maybe even the identity will be more like, we'll have multiple representations online for particular purposes. We'll not want to have one identity for all the situations. So blockchain will be better for this kind of identity. So blockchain is almost like the tool to create identity on blockchain in virtual space. It's the tool to be uniquely identified and proving some kind of some existence in the virtual space. Not only the ownership, but also like the definition of set of rights and permissions and that's things that belong to something. So you start to, again, disconnect the physical world from this future virtual world. And that's where blockchain apps can actually help if you build them properly. People will start creating those identities and sets of relationships between different applications and different properties and things. And you have to assume that the other technologies are just developing. There will be virtual reality, that will be holographic presence in virtual reality. There will be whatever you can think. There's like kind of virtual ownership and big properties, residential properties. It's like palaces in virtual space, and so on and so on. See, artificial intelligence changing the world so much that the blockchain suddenly will be this only mathematically provable source of truth. Because if you can, with artificial intelligence in a few years, for sure, you'll be able to fake almost any video, including any person, create a video of that person doing something, saying something, whatever. There'll be no problem at all for the advanced AI. So you have to assume that all those technologies go forward and how the blockchain apps will be present and solving the problems of the world like this. Because blockchain, again, shines in those situations. It's the only way of mathematically proving something that's like timestamping things, so ownership or proving ownership and things that happen. And like if you send the AI nowadays online to search online articles and bring you back information about what's the truth about whatever, about COVID and so on, you're really not sure what the AI will come back with. But if there are some blockchain-based mathematical proofs or proofs of results researchers, then even if we don't understand them, the AI of the future will be able to look at the data and know that the data was not altered later. It was not modified based on some future research or future government's decisions about what to hide, what to change. So this will be very, very important for the world with AI. All right, so actually slowly running out of time, and I think we are close to finalizing things. So do not think about dreaming too big with blockchain. Even as just a moment ago, I was talking about those really big dreams of the future world is very different. Blockchain being very important there. For now, think about solving the problems that crypto communities have. Because you need to find is like 10, 50, 100 users to sell the product to build something to. And we see this highly successful products that raise money for development, that actually solve the problems. Things like Dune Analytics. It's a dashboard of simple SQL statements, querying the data of blockchain data. Like so just querying the information about the tokens, about the behavior of the smart contracts. And it recently raised some money, and you would use it. Like it's fun to use because people need it, and people need to show those dashboards. I don't know, to check how their systems work, how to trade, whatever. Think of Uniswap, which is like a simple solution practically used only by crypto people, right? It has this huge daily volume of trading, but it's only targeting crypto people. Uniswap is not trying to connect physical world with crypto world. Uniswap is serving only the traders who are already on chain. The same for, okay, Maker is somewhere in between maybe. But look at the problems that people have in crypto space, in blockchain space, around trading, around tooling, around, yeah, whatever, like education, and deliver to those people. And that's how you'll actually build successful application when the blockchain grows further and further. It will grow slowly, but it will. All right. And again, sometimes you'll think when you learn about blockchain, because it's this global tool that's available for everyone, like cross-border and so on and so on. So you can solve the global problems with that. And it's not entirely like this, I think, in most of the cases. When you want to build that, in a way, like we can think of the governments being either built from the top down, like a tool for the rich and powerful to control everyone else so they can protect themselves. Or you can think about governments and countries as a tool for those weak and less powerful, less rich to actually protect themselves from the rich and powerful. So it's both have a bit of truth, right? But when you think of blockchain now, again, it's not good by itself. It can serve something really bad, like the powerful, rich governments, rulers, very bad people to actually use blockchain to control everything. The cash flows, the transparency of transactions require you to register all your traveling, for example, on blockchain. So even in years, you will not be able to clean the historical information, whatever mistakes you made in the past, or not even mistakes, whenever you opposed the governments. Maybe whenever you oppose the governments that are not yet ruling. So you say something now, it's recorded in blockchain, and in 10 years, people will be able to prove that you were against those who are in power. So these are huge risks. Like the blockchain can bring all of those bad things. And then maybe you just can, okay, so if you deliver the solution from the very beginning to the most powerful and the biggest governments, then it may happen like this, that there will be no control from the bottom up. But if you deliver the solutions to the neighborhoods, to the local communities, for voting, for agreeing on things together, then slowly, people will be used to how to use blockchain, how to verify things on blockchain. And they will be requesting for those solutions to bubble up the government layers. It will go up from the local community to council, to a city, to a district, to the country, and then globally. Not as a tool of the oppression, but as a tool of verification and proving that things are being done in a way to protect people so they can actually do the things and not be cheated on or like whatever it means. Just if this is a tool of control, it should be a tool of control of those who just can use their power in nefarious purposes. All right, I think we are running out of time, and I think I prepared a bit more than I wanted just in case it runs fast. It runs too slow. Sorry, no, it runs too fast. And I'm totally fine to actually skip those items because they're not that super important, and leave the 5 minutes maybe to go beyond what we planned and listen to you if you have any questions. Just asking maybe, do we have to finish straight away, Antonio, or we should?
Not necessarily, no. We can, this is entirely up to you, Thomas, depending on how much time we have, because I'm pretty sure that there's still quite a few questions from people. There were a few earlier questions. That's I think we had one from Bajir, etc. So you can cover maybe the additional, just go through the additional slides and then go on the Q&A afterwards.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the third part of saying it's about delivery, and it's that's what I'm trying to show. Like the blockchain will very often like be somewhere in the middle, and it'll feel awkward to build the things around. It's just like it's a problem to build the things blockchain style. But ideally, you find a solution that comes around this blockchain solution and composes the blockchain to it in a way that makes the whole thing even better. Exactly like on the picture. I mean, it should be a good intuition here. So you think of blockchain as something really, really awkward, but also very powerful in delivering solutions that are not yet possible without it. So composability of this blockchain properties of verification, of immutability, those that you keep there, is the key to success. Like just use a few small pieces and deliver the whole thing around it. As for tooling, go for anything that's most popular. Just move forward. Don't focus too much nowadays about which blockchain you use, which tools you use, something that works. It's the solutions that matter at this stage. I mean, when you have super mature market and you have lots of careers in the market, and then you can choose like the flavor of it. For now, it's all about delivering solutions. It's all about the growing technology as fast as possible. So people will not look at which tools you use, which blockchains you use. They will look whether you use the most popular so you can deliver the solutions to the users. And keep looking at the examples that are already there and just copy them shamelessly and iterate slightly over and over again and learn in this way. I mean, we have perfect examples of like those solutions, they will survive if you try to copy them because they're strong brands. But you can build something that will build on top of this Lego blocks of smart contracts that work. And they already tested. And we should think of those things that the longer they are there working properly, the more you should build on top. And you should iterate on top of the existing solutions. The boring thing, so deliver already nowadays, you can deliver a lot of blockchain solutions for the local governments, for the communities, and it's all for notarization of data. So this is one thing that blockchain is perfect for, and it works there, and you can already deliver projects and ask for funding for innovation, for improvements. All the local governments, or even like on the higher scale, the governments can benefit from this provable timestamps of blockchain, notarization capability. So just push the documents, they're hashed, right? Allow people to verify their certifications, their results, mostly these, like whatever, degrees, their permissions, but in a way which is entirely belonging to them, so they can decide who to prove it to, how to verify it, and so on. Do not expect to solve entire problem. And I was saying, mixing physical world with the blockchain world. So you will not be able to entirely remove the risk of someone pushing the information about the work of art on blockchain, trying to prove that it's real, that it was not counterfeited, and then actually replacing it with a fake and replacing some kind of attached chip to it or something. So you won't solve the entire problem, but you can actually improve the state of things. So you can, by just adding a lot of data hashed again on chain for future buyers to verify, you can already improve the things and decrease the cost of verification. And yeah, again, like don't reject some solutions that you think of just because they don't solve the whole problem. They may be actually bringing some improvements and cost effectiveness that will find you users and buyers and investors. Okay, yeah, that's this additional few slides. Be very happy to hear some questions from you, or critique, or comments, or like disagreements. Like many of you probably have studied blockchain and think else.
Shall we go ahead with Bashir? I think Bashir had a question earlier. Do you want to go first, Bashir?
Hey, Bashir.
Hi, Tom. It was a nice presentation. I just want to know, can blockchain and AI work together? And can we have some use cases for it?
Yeah, so I think this source of truth for AI is the most important thing. So it's not like they working together. I just think that blockchain will be important for the future AI, because we all worried that the AI will be biased. We've already seen the experiments where the AI was just left unattended, and it was was just falling a victim of the same lies that we are falling a victim of nowadays. So we're reading the news, we're trying to find the truth, and we're struggling to find the truth. And the thing is, for us personally, it's nearly impossible nowadays to verify every single piece of data that reaches us, verify every single news content that is delivered. But for AI, this part will be simple. AI will be capable very, very quickly rejecting the truth from false if being given the proofs that are mathematical blockchain-based proofs. So this will be extremely important to achieve this kind of AI that will be unbiased and based on the true research, true events, true history, or at least it will be just unaffected by some kind of like future modifications, approaches to modify the facts that we believed true now. So AI will be able by itself think whether something potentially was falsified in the past, but it will be able to also verify that that it was not falsified later. So it's not the state being modified, changed, faked later, but potentially was incorrect at the time of creation, but it's timestamped and verified on blockchain. That's how I see that. And in no other way, really, I see AI and blockchain really cooperating.
Would it be fair to say that blockchain is potentially the infrastructure building blocks needed in order for AI to work the way we want it to work?
I think so. I think it will be important. I mean, it's hard to predict how exactly AI will behave. The intuition is that it will be similar to us in a way, that it will be making mistakes, that will be biased, and the same way as we think of ourselves, that we would make better decisions if we had access to truth and verifiable data sources. At least we've seen that in the past, that when we had access to data and the real experiments, we could make better decisions and discover better things. The problem is nowadays the data is there's too much data. So we no longer are capable of verifying it, but AI will be able to verify it. So it's like then we already have the next step, next stage of availability of data, but we don't have yet the next stage of verification. And I'll just make this data ready and filtered and stamped and verifiable for that next step of verification to be there, the AI.
Yeah. I think, Carlos, you had a question?
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit of comment on one of your answers, regarding use cases. I think we are, like everybody's saying, that we're early to the game, but I think people often forget how early we are. Like, for example, in the .com boom, there were companies like Cosmo.com, which was basically Uber Eats for the .com boom, but the infrastructure wasn't there. Like the business idea seems to work right now, but like we now have taxis with internet. Back in the day, all that chain of supply wasn't in there. So the use for blockchain may not even exist right now. Like maybe it's a solution that will fix something that is going to be relevant in a reality that is not present. And I think you touch base with this, like whenever augmented reality becomes something more prevalent and digital means digital assets start having real impact in our day-to-day life. That's like a prime scenario when blockchain can actually come and shine and actually solve problems in what will then be the real world. The blockchain is not gonna come and slap you in the hand because you commit counterfeit. It's submitted to that digital realm. So it's probably a safe assumption that's gonna have its more usefulness when the barrier between digital and what we call now real kind of gets grayed out, and that is going to come. We don't seem to have lost the appetite for that.
Yeah, it's a great comment. I totally agree. And I think when we think of companies of the past that failed during .com boom, It's true. Some of those companies were too early, failed, and so on. But behind every single company are some people who are building them. And the kind of skills that they acquired when building these businesses, they're most likely stayed with them, and they very likely built successful businesses afterwards, which means that if you think that blockchain is fun to build with, then even if you'll fail with the company nowadays, you'll acquire the skills that will be relevant and useful for the next 20, 30, 40 years or even more. So that's what I believe in. And yes, I totally agree that some of those businesses now will fail, even as exactly the same businesses with better infrastructure in the future will be very successful. I think we can look at Bancor and Uniswap. It's almost the same thing with a similar approach. Failing before stable coins and extremely successful when the stable coins arrived. So yeah. It's the times, but I'm pretty sure that the Bancor people with their skills, they can still build amazing things now.
Yeah. We had a question earlier from Rahimuddin around transaction. Do you want to unmute yourself, Rahimuddin?
Yes, Antonio, thank you so much. So what I was asking is, like in one of your slides, you mentioned that we cannot avoid transaction fee. So if, in a world where everything is, every transaction, I would say, is free for masses, but in blockchain, if we cannot avoid transaction fee, how can we make blockchain accessible among masses?
Oh, that's a massive misconception, I think, as well. That, like, again, because it sells so well in marketing and PR to tell that blockchain will solve the problems of the poor countries, third world countries, and so on. I simply believe it's not true in the short term. You have to deliver some solutions that will work now and prove that they can improve some processes, and then they'll be adopted in those countries when those solutions become cheaper. So those solutions for now will be expensive, but over time they can become cheaper and cheaper, so they're applicable to more and more countries, and they solve the problems of the third world countries, improving economies and so on. And it's a bit sad, but I just simply believe in most of the cases, people who promise to nowadays solve the problems of the third world countries first with blockchain, they're simply trying to sell and collect investment and do something nefarious, really, like just pretend that they are helping. Most of the cases simply doesn't work because it's too expensive. It's a new technology that requires a lot of computation power. And there's a lot of, sure, you can build specialized blockchains for those economies, but again, because of the nature of the technology, because of the price that you have to pay to specialists for understanding those technologies, the access to education is much, much better than in the past, right? Much more globalized, democratized, and this is great. But still, there are still technology hubs or languages, resources, and so on that are not available for all the people. And that's what I think. And it's a bit like, pretending that water is so cheap now, so it's not a problem now to deliver water to Africa. It is a problem still. And it's exactly the same, I think, with blockchain and anything else, electricity and so on. Sure, if you create solar panels, then they will be they'll be super useful and helpful now. And you hear about it, right? So they solve in the third world countries, some of the third world countries, the solar panels will be the only way to get the electricity access and so on, wherever it is, like whether it's Europe, South America, Africa, or Asia. Those places where people don't have the connection to electricity. Suddenly with the personal solar power solar power generators, they can do that. So in a way, if we deliver very good technology, maybe we can skip some other problems. So then we can speed up, jump over something that will never happen. I don't know, if you think that electricity nowadays has to be delivered over cables to some distant areas, then you can skip that process and never do that. So the same thing about with blockchain. We could maybe skip the process of introducing the credit cards or perfect banking systems, and you say, yeah, you can jump straight away to something better. And this is the hope. But to say that you will start with it in those countries, people won't do that because there's not enough money, and it's the money that will just push people to I mean, not always. I'm sure you have this fantastic people that will try to solve those problems first. But unfortunately, I think there's much more people who are incentivized by money.
Misconception. I have a question for you, Thomas. You mentioned earlier, you touched on the cost for storing and processing data on-chain and off-chain. So
Yeah.
On-chain, substantial. Transaction cost is going higher now for Ethereum. Do you happen to know or share any knowledge in terms of how can we improve that so that the transaction cost is manageable for people? Because everyone at the moment is, everyone is not able to pay for the amount that they're having to pay at the moment, even for small transactions.
Yeah, I think it's exactly the same intuition that you should have when you think about how internet was growing. I mean, at the beginning, people with 5G will be in the countries where people are willing to pay a lot for 5G or something. And then they will have a lot of internet bandwidth to deliver. But if you ask for it 10 years ago for the kind of bandwidth with 5G, it's just not available even for the richest. And first, people pay for the best things, and then they will become more ubiquitous and they'll be available for everyone else. And the price will be falling slowly with the progress of technology. But always the best, the newest things will be available for those who pay premium. I mean, it hasn't changed in the last few thousand years, I guess. So I don't expect it will be different with blockchain. Even as blockchain claims to be this like super technology that equalizes things, it's not. It's still technology, and innovation will be happen and will be delivered for a price.
Yeah. We have a question from Tropal. Do you want to unmute yourself, Tropal? Hello, Tropal.
We cannot hear you.
Would you like to type your question there? It might be your mic. And then
Hi, I'm question with regards to, yeah, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hello. Those are my questions.
We could hear you well for a moment, so.
Hello,
that's right.
Can you hear me?
We can, Tropal, yes.
Hello. Okay, all right, that's great. Well, hi, I'm Trapal here. Sorry about that. I think my mic had a bit of a problem. What my question is with regards to is that I've seen the problem in blockchain is that many people who are not very tech savvy, I mean, when it comes to mass adoptability, that whether we're looking at many dApps as well are not very user friendly. And what I want to ask is that what would it be advisable to be try to look at a solution when to make it more user friendly, or is that something for the future?
I think in a way it's a bit like with any other technology that some people who feel that it's difficult for them or it's hard to adapt to will choose never to do that. Some people will decide that they want to learn, and just by just pushing the technology and the technology being more and more available, you will have the next generations coming that will feel that it's natural. So the time will be slowly moving everyone to just accepting this and thinking, okay, I understand how it works, more or less. And you don't have to understand exactly how it works underneath, but you will understand it. It's a bit like with web pages. I mean, theoretically, anyone can create a web page, but it's still considered to be techy. But no one tells nowadays that they don't, almost no one will tell you that they don't understand the concept of web page or how to use one. But they'll still feel that like creating one, yeah, maybe there are some like tools for just no code, low touch website generation for like this kind of, I don't know, business card style website. And they can do that. But they'll still consider that there is some knowledge, some understanding of how it works underneath a bit more than to use it. Yeah, I think this is the closest intuition to what the blockchain will be. Like using credit cards. I mean, do people know exactly how credit cards work? That it's actually some kind of settlement between two banks and then kind of a loan, short term between the banks? No, they don't understand it, but they use the cards, and they also felt like, oh, this was a bit hard to adopt in the at the beginning. That they had to use some pins and like register with banking, the risks of losing the card number online and entering it, and how is it that people can take it in the shop to the behind the door and copy your number and steal your money. I mean, it was all some kind of a mystery, and it's still a bit of mystery, but people use them, and I think it's the same with the blockchain.
I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry. Just a follow-on question as well. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of this problem has to do with because of the storage fees, the fees with Ethereum, and if we're having to store a lot of data, as you said, it costs a lot of money to store and not feasible to store a lot of data on blockchain. That's why a lot of the platforms are not very user friendly. But is there? I mean, that's what for this particular hackathon, would it be something which we would be looking at to trying to solve, or is that again something which would probably come down a lot in the future?
No,
So,
rather take it as the current state of things. I mean, these are very hard problems to solve. I'm not saying that some people at the hackathon do not have the skills to do that. Possibly, yes. It just, these are the hard type of problems. So it depends on how you see yourself. Are you a researcher that has a very deep knowledge of blockchain or some kind of genius solution to improve it? It's a bit like you would go to hackathon for the building websites that you would like to speed up the internet 10 times,
Sure.
right? So this is some kind of.
Okay, thanks a lot.
yeah, and also I just want to iterate that this is a hackathon. You're not expected to build the full solution. So there's many things that's been covered in this presentation workshop that think small, start off small, just build and deliver something that's useful for the user. Because what Tomasz said earlier is over time, you can remove those features as and when it's the right time to do so. So don't think about full decentralization because that's not going to work. So just think of something small. It could be a particular application that can be used locally for now. And if it's a good use case, a good project, then you have a good chance of winning. As long as it solves a particular problem for the user, that's the key. So I think we're starting to get more and more questions, Tomasz. I was going to kind of cut it off there. Did you have another question, Carlos?
Not me. I was just answering somebody else about delegating fees, that there are already solutions like the Ethereum gas station network. And it seems that like it's obvious that people are worried about the cost of operating on blockchain. And these things will adjust over time. Like 15 years ago, SSL certificates for websites were considered prohibited by some people, and they were or the performance hit of just encrypting their website, spending the extra servers. Like those prices tend to adjust to the value of the production, of the means of the production. So there's a very nice sounding quote about that. I think it was Karl Marx who said it, but I don't have it at hand. That he was probably a little bit more eloquent than I. But yeah.
So thank you very much, everybody. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Tomasz, to conclude?
No, thank you so much for great questions. And I hope that you'll actually think about it later. I hope that you'll disagree with some of those statements and you'll build your own plan for how to deliver, how to solve some of the problems, which things to accept, which things to reject. So play with it, play with thinking of it, with thinking whether something matches your expectations or your misconceptions or conceptions about the blockchain. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Thomas. And don't forget, reiterate on existing solutions if you can. So as we discussed earlier during the presentation. So thank you so much, everybody. And thanks again, Thomas. Pleasure to have you again.
Thank you.
This video is recorded and we should be able to share this in the next 2 to 3 days or so. Thomas, do you mind if you just kind of share the slides so that people can follow that when they're watching the video, I guess?
Sure, I can share them on Slack so everyone will be able
on Slack, yeah. Thank you. Thanks again, everyone. And good luck with the rest of the hackathon. Cheers. Bye-bye. Stay safe. Thank you.